Just have two really quick questions for Ms. Smith, which she can answer with a yes or no. Ms. Smith, if we were to double the amount of money available to the providers but give it to someone not named Planned Parenthood, would you be okay with that?
I would have to know who it was going to and whether they were quality.
Anyone not named Planned Parenthood.
Not anyone, no.
Anyone who's qualified to provide
services. If they provide high quality services to low income people in the same way that Planned Parenthood does, frankly, yes, I don't
So
have
you're okay with us defunding Planned Parenthood as long as the money goes somewhere where it can do the most amount of good for the same group of people. Yes. You're okay with Congress defunding Planned Parenthood?
Not in the current environment where there is no one able.
And if there were, would you be okay with it?
If there were, yeah, it would be a different world, and yes, then you could fund that organization.
So if we can identify service providers that meet that same quality of care, not named Planned Parenthood, you'll support the Republicans in defunding Planned Parenthood?
I don't know that you and I will agree on who those people are, and I would have to know.
Well, how about we start? How about we just try? How about why don't we do that?
If you're asking me a hypothetical question, there was
I'll double the money as long as it doesn't go to the folks who donate money to Democrats' Planned Parenthood. We'll double the amount of money available as long as it doesn't go to Planned Parenthood. How's that?
As long as it doesn't go to Planned Parenthood. Planned Parenthood today is the institution that provides the best, highest quality care to women in this country, across this nation, in cities, in low-income areas where these services are unavailable to them.
They're also the target of videos that are barbaric and heinous and subhuman. So as long as we can get that same level of care and do it through an entity not named Planned Parenthood.
As a very small part of their services, and this is why you oppose them. And that is the only reason you oppose them.
You have no idea why. I was voting to defund Planned Parenthood, with all due respect, Professor, before the videos ever showed up.
I wasn't talking about the videos.
Well, I don't think we know each other well enough for you to
Probably
assign
not.
a motive to what I'm doing.
I think vice versa. And vice versa.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, gentlemen. Just to
Ms. Smith, yes. In the precursor to the Gonzalez case, the case of Stenberg versus Carhart, Justice Kennedy dissented from the decision to strike down the partial birth abortion ban, which was later upheld in the Gonzalez case in a different ban.
A different version, yes.
That's right. He described at length the testimony provided by abortionist Leroy Carhart about the alternate D&E method or dismemberment procedure. The fetus can be alive at the beginning of the dismemberment process and can survive for a time while its limbs are being torn off. Dr. Carhart agreed that when you pull out a piece of the fetus, let's say an arm or a leg, and remove that, at the time just prior to removal of the portion of the fetus is alive. Dr. Carhart also has observed fetal heartbeat via ultrasound with extensive parts of the fetus removed, and testified that mere dismemberment of a limb does not always cause death because he knows a physician who removed the arm of a fetus only to have the fetus go on to be born as a living child with one arm. At the conclusion of a D&E abortion, no intact fetus remains. In Dr. Carhart's words, the abortionist is left with a tray full of pieces. Justice Kennedy said, the fetus, in many cases, dies just as a human adult or child would. It bleeds to death as it is torn from limb. Ms. Smith, do you believe this practice represents a humane way to die?
Let me separate, which I think something that's getting confused here in this hearing again and again, which is procedures performed on pre-viable fetuses and procedures that are performed on viable fetuses. Both of the women here on this panel are here today because they were viable at the time the procedures were performed. What you're talking about is pre-viability procedures performed on a fetus that cannot survive outside.
Maybe not. Justice Kennedy was talking about a child that was born alive with only one arm because the other had been pulled off already in the abortion procedure. My question to you is, are you going to answer it? Is this a humane way to die?
I believe for a fetus, pre-viable fetus, yes, a D&E procedure is a very humane procedure, and it protects the woman and her health and safety more than any other procedure. And in fact, it was
Ms.
substituted
Smith,
for the
I'm going to
saline
reclaim my time and just
procedure.
say that I have to say that your view of humanity and mine are different.
I'm an associate research scholar in law at Yale Law School, where I direct the program for the study of reproductive justice. I'm testifying today in my personal capacity and do not purport to represent the institutional views of Yale Law School, of course. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. I'll make a few points here, and obviously I'm open for questioning. I don't want to repeat some of the important points that have already been made by the members. But I do want to point out a few things. First of all, this attack is part of a long campaign to discredit Planned Parenthood and other abortion providers. It is indeed an attack on the right to abortion. But Planned Parenthood has been a specific target of many of these types of attacks. And just since the year 2000, they've been the target of 9 similar smear campaigns using hidden videos or other recordings full of innuendo and false claims. Every single time, these allegations have been thoroughly investigated and debunked. Second, I'll make a quick comment on the videos. I'm very reluctant to rely on anything in these videos, given the findings of a team of forensic experts that's been submitted to this committee, which found that the tapes have been distorted and misleadingly edited, and as a result have no evidentiary value. This has also been recognized in a report issued this morning by the House Committee on Energy and Commerce, which also found that there is no evidence that Planned Parenthood or its affiliates have violated any federal or state laws. And this is after conducting a thorough investigation, questioning witnesses, and reviewing documents. I can comment, however, on the statutes as issued. As has been pointed out, the federal tissue statute does ban the sale of fetal tissue, but it specifically allows those who donate tissue to recoup reasonable reimbursements for costs, such as the cost of maintaining, storing, and transporting fetal tissue. These fetal tissue provisions were adopted with broad bipartisan support, passing by a vote of 93-4 in the Senate, for example. And Planned Parenthood officials specifically state in the videos, in numerous statements that were edited out of the short videos that were put on the web, that they are only seeking reimbursement costs, that they do not make profits from fetal tissue donation, and in fact they refused contracts that were offered to them that offered unreasonable costs. There's simply nothing in the tapes that indicates a violation of the fetal tissue law. There are also these allegations that these misleadingly edited videotapes provide probable cause to believe that Planned Parenthood violates the Partial Birth Abortion Ban Act. Now, I'm intimately familiar with that act. I was lead counsel in the case challenging the act. The Supreme Court upheld the law over my objections and held that the law was narrowly interpreted to apply in situations to which intactness is completely irrelevant. So the allegations here are based mostly on repeated statements of the word intact in a sort of ominous manner, the word being repeated both by interviewees and interviewers, kind of law and order style in the videos. But intactness has no relevance. It's neither sufficient nor is it perhaps even required to establish a violation of the act. Instead, all that matters under the statute is whether at the outset of the procedure the physician had the intent to do 2 things: vaginally deliver a living fetus up to certain anatomical landmarks, and then, second, perform a step to cause fetal demise at that point. Now, the reason it was so limited was because interpreting it more broadly would have applied to many abortion procedures. And I'm not surprised that there's so much confusion about this partial birth abortion statute, because it was deceptively campaigned for in this Congress and to this Congress, and people were convinced it had something to do with banning late-term, post-viability abortions, to which it doesn't apply whatsoever. So again, there's no evidence that physicians at Planned Parenthood perform procedures in a way outlawed by the Act. Now, also, there are a number of questions that have been raised generally about the ethics of fetal tissue donation. When similar issues were raised during the Reagan administration, the National Institutes of Health convened a research panel of ethicists and scientists, those on both sides of the abortion issue. As Mr. Bob stated, he in fact was on that panel. It was also chaired by a former judge who was himself anti-abortion. And a decisive majority of that panel found that fetal tissue research was morally desirable because it held great medical promise and could be accomplished without incentivizing abortions in any way. And in fact, it has done so, and many advances, medical advances, have come from that research. I see that my time is almost done. So I want to skip to what I think is the really horrifying thing about this hearing. The horrifying thing here is the mismatch between the allegations and concerns here about abortion, about fetal tissue research, and what is being considered, which is defunding Planned Parenthood's non-abortion related services. As Judge Kavanaugh of the D.C. Circuit explained recently in his dissent from the denial of rehearing en banc in Priests for Life, providing seamless access to contraceptives, which is a large portion of what Planned Parenthood does, reduces the number of unintended pregnancies. It furthers women's health. It advances women's personal and professional opportunities, reduces the number of abortions, and helps break a cycle of poverty. So the horrible irony here is that defunding Planned Parenthood would reduce, would rather increase the number of unintended pregnancies and drastically, I fear, increase the number of abortions that are necessary in this country. Thank you.
Wow.